interesting, isn't it? Where is it? Look at it falling forward. Okay, that's normal. Then he turns the lights on. Then what happens? Watch it and see. Same thing that happens to this thing. Mitigated gravity. Light pumped through mass. Where's our second song here? DJ Google. That's actually YouTube. It should go automatically. There it is. Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year to you, those of you in the immediate present New Year's Eve day, 2023. I imagine most of you will be coming in from the future. Maybe because, hi everyone, you heard something about some catastrophic disclosure, some alien UFOs or something in Ohio, or are they in Area 51? Remember that from the movies? Maybe that came true. I don't know yet. Let me get oriented here. Where am I? Okay, I'd like to get over to my little page first again. And, well, I can talk over this thing. Why not? Just for a moment. Introductory. Yeah, those of you in the future, you're checking in. Oh my goodness, there's aliens. They're calling it catastrophic disclosure, whistleblowers left and right. dogs and cats, 88 whistleblowers, whatever the hell it is, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. Leave a comment. Tell us why. Tell us why you're here from the future. Anyway, so then what happened? What happened was all 300, a lot of people started wondering, well, I know this is cringe. I know this is boomer. But I just thought of it 10 minutes ago or something. And you ask yourself, well, how did they get here? Well, this may be your answer. I'm not, claiming to be 1,000, I'm not making any claims here about how right I am. That's up to you and for history to decide. But, did they warp space and time, ripping the very fabric with 1,000 suns, the energy of the whole universe pushed right down to a one Planck length? You think God's gonna let you kick his door down? I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong. This is just one theory, one crackpot talking into the void here. Maybe that didn't happen. Maybe they looked at their spaceships and saw something different that doesn't do that. Because why would those guys visit us anyway? That's another story. That's speculation for other people. Other people, I'm not here for that. You have better shows for that, certainly. But I can't help but speculate myself, and this is my show. So then what happened? So then, you're wondering about that. Maybe that's not it. Maybe it's not warp drive, because we're seeing them. If you're coming out of the warp, if you're coming really out of the under ether, are you going to come out and bang into visible photons? 10 to the 35, 26 zeros larger than you? I don't know. I'd get that transmission looked at. Or maybe you think you heard... Why is the FBI on here? Okay, that's just a fair use thing in case I use somebody else's material here, which I don't think I haven't had. I had one strike back in my butterfly interview video. Did they generate their own gravity to get here? Well, how did they get here? I don't know. There's plenty of gravity already out here. Do we need any more? Maybe. That's an approach that could work. Possibly, yeah. It might take a Rube Goldberg setup to do it compared to other things. But maybe they got here. Maybe something slips out. Oh, I don't know. I really have no idea. And what I'm saying here, that goes whether or not this is true, I think, in my opinion, whether they get here by gravity generation or neutron subway. I have no idea. We'll find out. I have an opinion. Some of them, if not most, might get here my way, and we're here to talk about that. And even if they're not, but this will work anyway. Yeah, and instead of generating gravity, which we already have plenty of, maybe you want to shut it off for a certain purpose. Like so you can float, fly, flit around in the air, in the sky, in space, aim it at a star, start pulling and pumping it through, ride that wave, whip around the star, throw it in reverse, shut it off, put it in neutral, hit the clutch, use that gravity then the gravity's back on, right? Boom. Anyway, the logic behind this is shutting off the gravity, mitigating it. You do that by using light. So that's what we're here to talk about. This is the last of 7. If you watch all 7 on twice the speed, you're going to, 4 hours or something, get a good overview of the light, the gravity mitigation property using ambient light. which in the future may be far more interesting to a lot of people. If not, I got practice live streaming. Alright, so let's get started. Hello, everyone. I am Brian Kelly, a retired engineer and attorney with a background in design, construction, startup and testing, as well as legal issues within the energy, engineering, and construction industries. I also worked in surety and fidelity bonding, including white-collar matters similar to the Bernie Madoff case. I think most of you are old enough to have heard of that. Like the one I had with Jeffrey Epstein's mentor. All of you have heard of him, right? In addition to the construction cases at large financial institutions like Citigroup and AIG. First I was out in the mud, in the dirt, then in the engineering office. No, that was backwards. Engineering office, then the dirt, then the trailers, then the mud, then the dirt, then Wall Street, and back into the office park, something like that. Anyway, and now here we are now in a retirement mode. But that's my background. My full resume is on there. The details can be found. So what? But people like a little overview. The subject today is called light pumping for an anti-gravity and inertial mass reduction effect. This is a concept of mine that is about 10 years old now. I am giving you a bare bones introduction today because, as you can see from the links page, I've got a lot to say and many different ways to say it. So this is just a brief and concise overview. You can read the detailed links and watch the videos posted there at your convenience. Now to the overall concept and general principles. Most importantly, I start with the assumption that light, the full spectrum, is the best medium for us to use to cause an anti-gravity inertial mass reduction effect at this point, and not space-time. Anyone else saying that? I never heard it yet. Light is in space-time, but it is not space-time itself. I am not dealing with space-time, the vacuum, quantum foam, or anything like that. That's other people. The relevant medium for this concept is also not air, and it is not water, and it is not even space itself, which is mostly just filled with light, but of course has other things in it. The way I see it, air, water, and space are not things that have light within them, so much as they are things that are within light. A little backwards thinking there, but that's how I go. So, a light only, and by that I mean the full spectrum, is the medium here. Secondly, and very simply put, to achieve an anti-gravity and inertial mass reduction effect within this medium, we will mimic the phases of matter, which are in turn caused by energy levels, which are in turn caused by light. So we can use light to move through light by pulling it through the skins and bodies of a massive object, which will simultaneously cause the desired anti-gravity and inertial mass reduction effects. Like this little guy up here in the light pumping light bubble we call a tic-tac. That's what I think it is. Nice and white, nice radiant flux, rumored to have black spots. The black's where the light comes in, the white's where the light goes out, which you might see as cold, glowing auras of cold light, because it's cold up there in space where they're coming down from, and in the atmosphere there where they're flying around with the jets. And down here it's a little warmer. They just use what's there. I think I was talking about the massive object. Light is in space-time. So we can use light to move through light by pulling it through the skins and bodies of a massive object, which will simultaneously cause the desired anti-gravity and inertial mass reduction effects. How convenient. There is much more to it, of course, but again, I read that. So I can start with this falsifiable statement. One of the first things I dared to post on Twitter back in 2016. Quote, light pumped through matter reduces the effect of gravity, unquote. That still holds true today, of course, as contradiction of that statement would effectively amount to nullifying the phases of matter. Which may be possible, as there's sometimes the oddball exception, but I've never heard of that exception. Not that overrules the entire thing. There's a few oddballs. There always is. We can put forth such a general rule because we know that the phases of matter are caused by their energy levels. Anyone want to argue with that? That is, light moving in, through, out, and around, commonly referred to as absorbed and emitted. I added around to those concepts as an object or craft encased in a bubble of slippery light is going to provide us with mitigated friction, drag, and inertia, in addition to the anti-gravity effect. We will be within things like air, water, and space, but always slightly separated and not interacting directly. This bubble notion is not unlike the warp drive bubble concepts, as some of you may have already surmised. These light bubbles can then be intensified, diminished, and shaped to facilitate relative motion with respect to other objects. Up, down, this way, that way, this way. So we can simply mimic the as yet unfalsified natural phenomenon described as the phases of matter. That phenomenon also generally describes what buoyancy is and the lift of gases. Solids and liquids typically don't lift, despite being comprised of the very same atoms and molecules. But gases do because of the light pumping in, through, out, and around the molecules and atoms. We will simply harness and scale this well-understood effect. Waveguides and the like can also be made to cause the same outcome with the desired anti-gravity like floating and inertial mass reduction effects. That's the next step after this step. We all see this phenomenon constantly, but for the most part don't appreciate it. It is easily observable in natural archetypes, such as when observing the differences between water ice, liquid water, and water clouds, as well as with man-made airships and balloons, and probably to a lesser extent with butterflies, insects, and birds. A slightly more speculative sidetrack that I am avoiding today. See my other videos, because I am only addressing the bare bones. To keep it short, sweet, and hopefully effective, I am sticking to the mostly indisputable today. To debunk what I am suggesting here will take you straight back to the phases of matter themselves and how energy levels work, as well as things like basic buoyancy. You want to argue about that? Then one would have to explain away, good luck, how the archetypes mentioned above exist somehow in spite of the effect of energy levels, which are in turn caused by light. Then they would have to explain why these archetypes cannot be mimicked and improved upon drastically, especially given modern material sciences and optomechanical knowledge. Because that's precisely what I am now proposing. You see, it took me a while to do it, but the arguments for this concept are now pretty much bulletproof, and new methods to improve upon these natural processes, for those of you in Canada, processes are flowing out of the science and engineering community every single day. Buoyancy, lift, and the phases of matter are material properties that human beings can certainly improve upon and optimize. There is absolutely no reason why they cannot be utilized more effectively and improved upon drastically. Yet this seemingly obvious endeavor has not been undertaken. This unfortunate state of things is also why the concept and the general principles I present to you today are not patentable or otherwise able to be monopolized. They belong to everybody, but what is done is one thing, and how it is done is quite another. So what I'm saying is that the open source anti-gravity and inertial mass reduction process is right in your face. I am telling you, in plain language, exactly what that is. Maybe if I'm an alien, you'd believe me. Cheap shot at a straw man. It is not 0 point energy, but it is free energy. So I propose that we take this free energy and perfect the light matter interaction in order to bend it to our will. That's what you have a brain for. As as was done with fire and the motive power of heat in general, and which we can now extend to the entire spectrum. It is time to move beyond that narrow band of infrared upon which we so heavily rely. Bang, boom, rocket explosion. Woo. That is what science and engineering are for. This is how human beings progress. Pardon me. So, this is where the metamaterials come in. For example, the lift of the random hydrogen gas molecules in, say, the Hindenburg, every single one functioning haphazardly and working against each other, which is what they do, could be ordered and purposed and vectored right down to the angstrom level. That's our job, see? That is, optimized with metamaterials, molecular and atomic approaches, vacuum ships, a trap light bubble, a basic one. Aerogels, a little more advanced. A balloon, then you're into your balloons of various kinds. And you're manipulating it with hot air, aren't you? Are you deterministically doing that? Yeah, I think you are. Could you do that with a metamaterial far more efficiently in a more ordered systems? Yeah, probably, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. All right, okay, let's get back to waveguides. Photonic crystals. Topological insulators. Plasmonics. Quasi-crystals. Sub-wavelength waveguides. And maybe even some mythological magical isotope tweaking will all likely work. But these metamaterial design and fabrication efforts must be working toward a feasible, intelligible, indisputable, unfalsified general principle. And light pumping is indeed such a principle. See? Tough to argue against that, isn't it? Believe me, every objection you may have, I've had that argument in my head for a long time. So I understand. If we also happen to bend space-time or warp the vacuum by accident along the way to this idiot-proof sure thing, which could happen. Let's say you accidentally trap some light and you really do freeze it. I think that's impossible, but, who knows? I don't mean trap it, I mean stop it. Because that's the kind of thing you'd have to do. At that point, you're like, yeah, you may be interacting with a vacuum. Can you do that? I don't know. If we also happen to then along the way to this idiot-proof sure thing, then so be it. Stranger things have happened. Plus, you can use this for the, local, okay? Warp Drive Express, this is the local, okay? But in the meantime, we are going to use those metamaterials and waveguides to capture and transfer the explosive momentum of ambient mass equivalent light. You can call it a continuous radiation pressure, or even thrust from reloadable fuel until you get comfortable with the idea. But just keep on thinking about those angstrom-sized atoms, or sub-wavelength waveguides capturing and exploding photons thousands of times larger than they are, in the nanometers, and how fast they can be made to do so. Also, internalize and understand the fact that the very medium... Internalize and understand the fact that the very medium you will be pumping through is also a highly efficient propellant when used correctly. Now, that's an insight. Did you hear me back there, Skunkworks? Or shall I repeat that? Anyway, this is how you do propellantless, at least for the time being. We are talking about angstrom-sized nanopumps and picometer waveguide systems that are hardwired by nature to run and keep running at attosecond light speeds and higher. That's 18 zeros per second every second since the Big Bang. It is not quite perpetual motion, but those numbers will work out fine for most of us. Per square inch, those angstroms are in the quadrillions by area and the quintillions by volume, or thereabouts. That is 15 more zeros by area. Working with those 18 zero attoseconds in an already lighter than air metamaterial such as graphene, which is simply hydrogenated graphene, which is simply graphene soaked in hydrogen. These materials can fuse those nanopumps into a solid chunk of a skin comprised of automatically refueling nanorockets in the octillions, all acting as one. This kind of design will start to approach optimal energy densities. Wouldn't it? Want to argue that, anyone? Put it in the comments. Which will then be compounded with femtosecond and attosecond time scales to produce paradigm shifting efficiency. True. When you put it that way, it sounds pretty easy though, right? Maybe it's because it is easy. But you have to do the work. Then it's easy when it's done. But first you have to figure out what to do. Okay, this is what to do. This is one thing to do. This is probably a good thing to do. Things like that will give you a radiant flux per mass density. Anyone want to argue? Put down your slide rule and come out and fight. In abundance, petajoules and zetawatts, and are becoming achievable here and now. There are many, many ways to look at this concept. Why am I yelling about that? Mostly all describing the same thing. To floating iridescent hummingbirds, to tales of the UAPs themselves, allegedly. Boy, how'd you like to be sitting there in a warehouse looking at this thing for 40 years, 80 years or whatever, not knowing what the hell it is, and then oh yeah, could be that, yeah. That is why there is a link to the links above, and why this presentation has to be short and sweet and packed with things like falsifiable but unfalsified statements, indisputable statements, and mind-numbingly large, small, and fast numbers until people get the general idea of what I am talking about here, people. Then we can get into all the subtleties, which certainly do exist, but are not dispositive of the overall undeniable efficacy here. So basically, I'm all but telling you the way it is, not suggesting it. Nature is what it is, that's the way it is, and it has been here the whole time. The science is already there, going back to at least the Greeks anyway. And almost certainly further. The math seems to be lagging right now, though, just as it was for the Montgolfier brothers. Look it up. The Wright brothers and the early Chinese rocket scientists. As with them, the equations will have to play catch-up here, as usual. Sometimes we lose sight of the fact that physical concepts and ideas exist independently of the many eccentric ways to explain them. That said, I will go on to suggest that equations around supercavitating bubbles in fluids with invariable gravitational fields might be one way to describe this. Shout out again to SCU in Australia, who I forgot a couple times, at least once, who is looking at it this way and published a paper on it. SCU, Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, something like that. And you got a guy, they're looking at it in the fluidic way, which is right. Or it may be done, and then you put an underlying changing gravitational field under it. Change one of the bubbles to light. Or it might be done with optomechanical force studies for light matter interactions in a gravitational field. That's basic optomechanical 101, which I started reading that right when I started getting into this 10 years ago. I bought the photonics, fundamentals of photonics, folks. And I couldn't get through one sentence of it without looking up every word. And I went through that whole book because that's how motivated I had the energy at the time. That's a long story. But, and you start getting into it, and you start seeing what's this new field of photonics. Now, they do a lot of signaling with that. A lot of you know far more about it than I do. And, signaling and fiber optics, and basically that's also any kind of light that you're talking with. In other words, there's a lot of scholarship about the signaling aspect, but the optomechanical forces and we should talk about that. The optical trapping, which our Secretary of Energy won the Nobel Prize for, Mr. Chu. And then, but basically he was working off of, the guy that died, who I believe got a posthumous Nobel Prize or some sort of big recognition he deserved. His last name started with, it's like Asher or, I should know that. Anyway, that's the optical trapping and all that. That's optomechanical. That's the optomechanical realm. The light-matter interaction is a buzzword they like. And the government likes that, and the scientists like that, and they probably like it over at Wright-Patterson and Area 51 and Los Alamos and all those places, right? Don't ya? You see where that can go now, can't you? Don't you? I bet you do. I bet you do. But right now, where are we? Yeah, that's it. Light matter interactions in a gravitational field. Can't make it much simpler. But right now, there's not even a consensus on photon mass for thrust, despite photons being the drivers of most of it. Or barely even the notion of fields of light in air or water, or the force of gravity within is diminished that I have ever seen. I think I came up with it. Maybe, I don't. Nor have I ever seen a model for a point of mass deterministically controlling its own light bulb on a gravitational field. There's your Nobel Prize, somebody. Remember, it's Brian with a Y. Perhaps something like this, that exists. Or should exist. For supercavitating hypersonics and submarines. Oh, it doesn't? Oh, it does. But I doubt it. Is such a region of curved space less curved and less curved in that instance, okay? If you need to do it with your, bowling balls on beds and fabrics and all that, that's valid too, some way. It's just not as direct as this. So you can do that. You can get out your cones and your light cones and all that. You can get out your Feynman diagrams and do it that way. Have a blast. Gravitational field. Yeah, look. A model for a point of mass. See that tic-tac right there? See that? Is it this way or this way? I can't see myself. That is a point of mass deterministically controlling its own light bulb on a gravitational field. Why do you think it moves like that? Because it does that. So, I happen to think so. But that is inconsequential. Where am I? Because I don't think about anything. So do the math. If you like math, please help us out here. But again, right now, as far as I am concerned, that is their problem, not ours. Especially you government guys, right? Dig in. I don't know. And if you want to contract with them, okay, dig in. I don't know why I am here to float away at will. All right? And shoot off at the speed of light in my own cozy little light bubble. Look how cozy that thing is. Cozy in there. It's got a fire going in there. It's sitting in its favorite recliner with a remote control that says, go ahead and make a fool out of these guys. Go right, left, left, right. They're laughing in there. Cozy little light bubble using the absolutely obvious characteristics of nature. Yeah, that's a shot. That's a shot because it's right there. It's right in front of your face. Big science missed it. Mainstream physics. But, you see these absolutely obvious characteristics of nature I'm telling you about? Okay? That's what they are. How that is documented later is of secondary importance, but despite my apparent hubris, I will be glad to help with bookkeeping. Please just spell my name correctly. Footnote 1. Footnote 1, or you're bogus, dude. I would also like to ask, as somebody more mathematically proficient than myself, to explain how the mass of a light entangling, and by entangling I mean in the plain meaning of the word, not the spooky action, not the quantum foam, not the quantum anything right here, how the mass of a light entangling object over time losing its mass equivalence, and a rate greater than the local gravitational field's acceleration requires, may be likened to a snapshot of negative mass. Now, we beat this to death a couple of times this week, so go back and listen to that if you have any questions about that part. I would think there might be some math already done out there by now. It's not negative mass. It's negative mass over time. But I tend to doubt it. You can't argue with that, can you? Negative mass over time. It's losing more than the acceleration of the field that it's in. It's losing more than it has to. That's all. Sure, it's based on a balloon. Is it wrong? No, it isn't. Wrap a slippery... yeah, all right. Again with a rocket equation. Or perhaps we can update the rocket equation. Make it continuous. Put the rocket in a mitigated gravitational field of its own making. That's a light bubble. And wrap a slippery light bubble. You already did that. Oh, but the thing does two things. Wrap it in a slippery light bubble to reduce drag, friction, and inertial mass. So it works on gravity and inertia, doesn't it? Yeah, of course it does. Because in my opinion, they both come out of the graviton, don't they? Look at the shape of the graviton. Spin 2, what's it do? Goes that. If you're above it, it pulls you down. If you're below it, it's pushing on you. If you're coming at it this way, it's a thing. You got to get through it. So it's a little, you got to make an effort to get through it, don't you? That's inertia. You got to push. But once you're in there, you're whipping around. And then you go out the other side. Just like the spinning revolving doors at Grand Central Station. It pushes you out. That's why you tend to stay in motion, see? Until you stop. Until you quit that little push. You got to do the work first. Then you'll go, as long as you keep going. Keep working on it, right? Meanwhile, it's pulling you, the one below you is pulling you that way, and the one above you is pushing you that way. Gravity and inertia in one neat little package. But that needs some math, doesn't it? But, see, if you visualize it that way, I can't do math like a lot of people, but I can visualize things like that. What would it look like? What if I was a one plank length man, all right? There's a little, here, where is that? Where's that little stupid cartoon? Man, it took me a while to make that. Inertia? It's probably under, forgive me, folks, while I dawdle my way through here and find, this is it, this goofy thing. So I'm wondering, what's a spin 2 graviton look like? That's what we're dealing with, right? Probably quantum geniuses, quantum gravity types, which I follow that. The quantum gravity. I think it's the loop. I think that's the one I like. Some of it's string theory, some of it isn't. Okay, I believe in a coherent, ordered universe created by an intelligent designer that I call God. It is Sunday, isn't it? I got to go at 5. Normally I'd be in there now. And it makes sense. And it's simple. And it does multiple things at once. Right? This little thing makes gravity and inertia. Now you'll find that on my links page somewhere under images. I think I have 6 pages on that, and this is on one of them. And this tells you what the world's like down there. There's a little Planck length guy getting on the ride, and there's another one on the other part of the ride. And just read it. I had to make it. I saw it in my head. I'm like, I have to make this stupid thing. And I made that frame by frame because I'm not, I'm okay at graphics, but I took the intro course. But that works for me. I can see it right there. That's what it is. If it's a graviton, which it seems to be. Okay, let's get back to where we were. I guess we were on the rockets already. How do we rewrite? I got really off the track. Perhaps we can update the rocket equation. How do we rewrite? This concept can be described as... The thing with this is, this concept can be described 6 ways to Sunday and back. You see those past 7 things? That's 6 ways to Sunday and back. But apparently, since that hasn't been done conclusively to date, this novel concept, which is simply mimicking what already exists in nature, will have to bring that about. You take a balloon and you soup it up. You get that? Instead of putting a jet on your bicycle, you soup up a balloon. Okay? Relate to it that way, if you must. So yes, the current lack of comprehensive mathematical descriptions is a weakness here, but that is not an obstacle, especially because I just told you 6 ways to do it. Merely a historical footnote. Hi, future. What time did you get here? Oh, all right. It took that long, huh? Well, I was here, so enjoy. Merely a historical footnote because the phases stand unfalsified and archetypes exist. The notion of optimization, which would involve the engineering of metamaterials in this case, has proven worthwhile over and over and over again throughout history, and this concept is fresh, fertile ground. You can see all of this with your own eyes, whether you appreciate it yet or not. I suggest you do. The math is once again lagging innovation is merely a secondary concern and often does, not always, but often. Fortunately, that gives other people something to do that aren't me. One upside to this weakness is it will also cause people to realize that although this concept has yet to be described mathematically to everyone's satisfaction, including my own, it is also impossible to debunk mathematically because nature is what it is. Be honest about it. Be honest about it. Is what it is, no matter what has or has not been written or published about it. Although there's a lot of stuff that's right around this. They just didn't put it together. They just didn't. It's just not. So hopefully my job is to catalyze that. Especially if there's some big revelations and catastrophics happening. This will explain some of it. At least some of it. And if it explains none of it, it stands on its own as doable anyway. If you don't agree, write a comment. And while sufficient archetypes already exist, this concept is indeed testable as well. I started experimenting with balloons and mirrors early on, did it for years. What is that? You know that beam propulsion you hear about? Well, you take a laser beam and you shoot it at the thing. And I believe they experiment with that and they try that. Pardon me. Depending on what the laser beam's doing, that's what I was doing with these balloons. If the laser beam is moving mass equivalent light through the thing, because we don't know what they're doing, it's a secret. Then you're doing the same thing as shooting you have a balloon, okay? It's been around for a couple weeks. It's starting to roll down the wall. It's starting to sag. Maybe it's laying on the floor in the morning, and when the sun comes out, it's back floating around again, okay? That's when you get it. That's the prime time for this. And you have to live in a sunny place like sunny Alpharetta, Georgia, where I used to live when I did this, with the balloons, because it's not easy here in Pennsylvania. I'm surrounded by trees too. Whereas there, I had the perfect morning sun and evening sun. This way, can't get at it. Anyway, so all you do is, here's the sun coming in, nice and bright. You get it on your little Walmart mirror there, your $10 mirror, $12. Well, maybe now it's $24. Yeah. And you aim it at the balloon over there that's on the floor. You shine that on there. It goes straight down to it, and the balloon goes up to the ceiling and sticks up there. It'll fall down in a little while, but in other words, you deterministically controlled that thing to be anti-gravity again. Put it that simple. So if that's what these beam propulsion has something to do with that, that's a good idea, but you can just use the ambient light instead too, because you don't want to be going around the universe with laser beams, But it's a good way to experiment. Or if you're on a budget, go to the Dollar Tree, get some balloons, the star ones, the stars and the ovals, or the shiny ones, different colors. Get different colors and see how they react. All right, I'll leave that to you. And did it for years. I did it early on. But for this crowd, a basic metamaterial might be necessary. All right, we got a new year coming, and I'm done with this little project. So I've been thinking about what can I do? Think of an easy way. It's got to be easy. Yeah, well, I have some ideas about it. And every time I think of them lately, you just wonder about these orbs. Why are they shaped that way? It's not aerodynamic, they say. Oh, yeah, it is. It's not aerodynamic, but it's photodynamic. How's that for a coined buzzword? And you better start thinking about that. Okay. Because I am. A homemade street corner bootleg graphene or equivalent. Think of it this way. All you will be doing is taking something lighter than air, like graphene, right? That's what the aerogel, you can make an aerogel out of it. You put a little heat in that thing, 1 pound lifts an elephant. Go look up that video. It's got to be right and everything, but they're just starting with it. And it's also an aerogel. You heat up the graphene a little bit. It'll work like a hot air balloon, okay? But it's structured. It's a little more structured than a balloon, which has all that loose gas, right? In the graphene, the aerogel of any kind, you're starting to order it. And now you're on your way, see? And your air molecules, or in the case of graphene, well, that's the next step. You don't have it captured in an ordered way. You have it trapped. You have it stuck on there in an ordered way. So you build up. You don't get a 12-cylinder Ferrari overnight, do you? No, you got a Stanley steamer going. Well, that's different, but I think you get my point. Think of it this way. All you will be doing is taking something, like I said, even making it even lighter than air. Think that way. How do I make it lighter? How do I control this process that makes the thing lighter? Make it even lighter than air by adding hydrogen to it for a hydrogenated graphene, known as graphene. Then you gradually learn to control its inertia mitigating anti-gravity properties. You dope it to turn left. You decorate it to turn right. Whatever it takes, up and down, left and right. Then you start building around it. I think that might be why the orbs are so, a good place to start. A simple, basic thing, right? Because you have your hemispheres, right? And then you have slices, and then you have pie slices. You start with your hemispheres, okay? Heat the right side. Is it going to go left? heat the top, is it going to go up or down? I don't know. Well, I might know, but you don't know. It depends. It depends on which way the Earth is spinning and all that. That's, you dope it to turn left. You decorate it to turn. Then you start building around it. Okay, once you have that little orb going up, down, left, and right, floating around the world, you stick your little spy thing in there, don't you? You use the chump U.S. Uncle Sucker's own Wi-Fi and waveguides. Internet. What are they stealing off the satellites, huh? Yeah, that's right. You dope it to turn left, you dopes. Then you, whatever it takes. Then you start building around. Instead of a mirror deterministically reflecting the sun onto a balloon, maybe Mark Sokol chasing a piece of street graphene through the back alleys of North Jersey with Jeremiah Zaquan, or Josh with his aerogels, or Wayne Ajala with his experiments, might be the stunt that finally opens the world's eyes. Or it could be this catastrophic, whatever it is. Or it could be spy balloons, big secrets. What are you hiding, huh? Huh? Yeah. Or as I suggested to certain well-known TTSA members repeatedly, sorry about that. Did I spit on you? Getting on you? Put the material in a chamber and just fiddle around with the different electromagnetic fields. I'll say it again. 3 different things. Electric field, magnetic field. We all know what electricity is and a magnet does. Right? Yeah, sure. Right hand rule. It's kind of the same thing wrapped up in one. All the electrons aim in this way. They pull at each other or they push at each other, depending on which way, right? It's fun playing with magnets, huh? Yeah. And then there's another thing called electromagnetic, which is what they call light, because they didn't know that it was the same thing. It was related at first. How would you know that at first? You wouldn't know that at first. That was a big breakthrough. They're related. Well, of course they're related. Well, yeah, I'll go through it. You take 2 photons of a similar size, Mr. Feynman. Surely you're joking. No, I'm not joking. You take 2 of them and you wrap them around each other. Perhaps they're gammas, and one of them stuck in a some kind of atom. I forget the one they like to use. It's in there. It's loose. It's an extra one. These big atoms, they get extra stuff floating in there they don't need. They just happen to be in there. So you take your fancy laser at Argonne Lab or whatever it is, and you shoot it. You shoot a gamma in there. And it goes right in there, and it meets up with another one it likes. There are 2 waves that are the same, but if they hit each other at a 90-degree angle, they'll wrap around each other. Okay? You take a 720 and a 720, and they wrap around each other. You got a 1440, and what's that, my friends? Anybody? Let me take a sip here while you think about it. We call that an electron. That's mass. And that gives you your electro and your magnetic, but it's also mass. It's heavy, it's gravity affects it and all that stuff. But it's made out of what? What did I just tell you? 2 photons. Mass equivalent light. That's what Albert Einstein got his prize for, and Mr. Planck, I guess, gave him the idea, but you can look all that up. Those guys, and then they start quantizing those photons and particles and things, and now that's a whole nother, world we're not going into here. We keep it simple here because you're looking at someone that can only remember. I'm not going to remember the rest of it unless it's relevant to this. So I don't. But I like to listen to it. You dope it to turn left, you decorated it to, maybe went through Mark. Well-known TTSA member. Okay, yeah, here we're listing out the kinds of light. Electromagnetic fields. Okay? these spaceships, these anti-gravities, whatever you call them, whatever, if they run on light, and some of them probably do, and if none of them do, they could. They'll run on temperatures, visible light, microwaves, X-rays, radio waves, sound, or whatever frequencies you have handy, gamma rays, a little dangerous, you have handy to see what affects and controls it. We're in the early stages, my friends, early stages. You don't know what's going to do what. You got to do it first and then adjust it and fiddle with it. If you think you're getting free energy overnight like some of these utopians on UFO Twitter, it doesn't just, it doesn't just happen. And the oil business is not going out of business quickly. And they'll just go to something else. They'll probably master this first. Because what is this? The basic is a hydrocarbon. Anyway, it'll be a gradual change to these things. You want, you start out by mitigating gravity. You use less oil and gas and stuff. Anyway, I talked about that the other day. Ultimately, we will build around these malleable material properties of lift and buoyancy, which are caused by light, key takeaway, and optimize them until we are pumping light at a rate approaching the speed of light. That's your goal, see? It may seem very silly and funny for a while with the magic wand, like it was for me in the balloons, but ultimately this cannot work. I'll say that again. This time for Raytheon and DOE in the back. Ultimately, this cannot not work. How does it not work? At some point, it's just simple common sense. Very simple, very common, very sensible. But I realize and acknowledge that a few performative hoops may be desirable here. If you can't visualize it, then you may want to see a thing. But no, it is not as awe-inspiring as warp drive. Or are you seeing the things out in your crashed warehouse? But no, it is not as awe-inspiring as warp drive, but bulletproof and idiot-proof we'll just have to do for now. So, take a quick look later at what I call a Philly Flyer, linked right here on the page, for an idea of what that might look like at first. Maybe before we get the magic wand out, something along these lines might inspire the experimentalists. Are you inspired? But we can talk about all that stuff later. This is a bare bones overview, and it's not intended to be a deep dive into waveguide and metamaterial technology. See how you can start rambling on that? That's why I try to keep it focused on one thing for now, to get the ball rolling in the right direction. Okay, getting away from the prototypes and back to the archetypes. I would expound for just a moment on the UAPs and UFOs themselves. I have personally never seen one. You may have. But we have all heard the stories, and people familiar to us all claim to have seen the compelling data. I tend to generally believe these accounts because they describe multi-spectral signatures and light-pumping behavior. That is precisely as I would expect them to be, and said so and told you so. With the so-called glowing auras of cold light. What else? What do you think that is? You think it's there for no reason? You think somebody comes across the universe, adjust the flashlights at you? To me, the 5 observables should be called 5 utterly predictables. I have a webpage on precisely that topic, in fact. But since we are bare bones here today, and as a huge distraction, I will say nothing further about it now. You can find that link later and read it to see why I occasionally cannot help but scoff at Arrow, scoff, and ATIP, scoff, and TT, scoff. I scoff at all of you. And all the infotainment, limited hangouts, slow roller types. Because a lot of you know by now, don't you? Oh, that's got to be tough, huh? The UAPs are, you're right there on the edge. You have the deep staters. You have the semi-deep staters. Then you have the limited hangouters. Ooh, what do you do then? What happens when the dog caught that car? Ooh. I don't know. Let's hang around and watch. The UAPs are, in all likelihood, pumping the full spectrum of light within a medium of light, just like a Virginia-class submarine pumps water. That's a tough one you can't dismiss that easily, can you? You don't see rockets working underwater, do you? Why not? Why shouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? Why don't you use those? Oh, you use a pump under there. A Virginia-class pump jet. Oh, yeah. Think that would work elsewhere? That just general idea, would that work? Like in another kind of sea, another ocean, another solid thing of pure stuff that you have to go through? Think that's a good analogy? I don't expect anybody listening to right now to buy that line wholesale. Except the ones that already do but won't say so. Happy New Year, military, industrial complex. But at some point, I predict that all of you will see that this stuff could not be more obvious. See, that's the thing about being obvious and simple. It's, you can't deny it. As for inertia means very little. When your craft surfaces are not directly touching atmospheres, be they gaseous or liquid, but are instead encased in a nice, slippery light bubble. There's a bit more to it in my opinion, but that gets into spin 2 gravitons and why spin 1 photons cut right through them, which is the kind of thing I'm skipping in this bare bones overview. Similarly, gravity means little to nothing to mass when the mass is losing mass equivalence at a rate greater than a local gravitational field's acceleration requires. In space, you would just aim the thing. It's rotating at the nearest star and start pulling light through the mass and pumping it back out at a rate approaching the speed of light. Or you can sit on the couch all your life. The craft will be pulling and pumping light in, through, out, and around while maintaining its own little protected and slippery bubble or cavity. So you're slipping right through there on free energy. How's that? Does that work out for you? I got $10. I still got it, my friend. Uh-oh. Well, at least we didn't close the window. I got $10. It says, is it right side up? $10. It says that's what most of these alleged UFOs and so-called unidentified anomalous phenomena are doing. But we will just have to wait and see. And that's why most of you are here, aren't you? In the future. So, the bottom line here is that this stuff is actually simple and idiot-proof. It boils down to a recognition of the need to optimize an analog of the phases of matter for a certain purpose, commonly called buoyancy, or perhaps now anti-gravity. Human beings have been changing material properties since before the cave was invented, so why stop now? This milestone, anti-gravity and inertial mass reduction, is one that we have not yet fully addressed with even the most basic tools and easiest concepts. Does it get easier than a balloon? At our disposal, but only with notions that, while ambitious, are not yet feasible. So let's just admit that much. Some of you, just some. Enough. Just enough. Let's just admit that much. Get over the embarrassment of letting the accomplishments of the Montgolfier brothers and their progenitors languish, and get on with it. Building around the inertial and gravitational mitigation properties of the light-matter interaction is a natural step. Admit it. It is. It just got waylaid for a while in favor of force and thrust. Oh, we forgot about that, yeah. Instead of using brute force explosions to overcome gravity, we will use the benefit of higher energy levels to free ourselves from gravity. We're freeing ourselves from gravity, you see? Freeing with the field. You can call it, some people like to call it a field propulsion. Yeah, you're using you can call it that, I guess, because you're changing the field around you to be less susceptible to gravity, because we know that light is less we're mitigating gravity. Okay, there's the word I need. Mitigation property. Building around it, and it just got waylaid for a while. This approach involves, yes, it's more subtle, elegant, and effective. Okay, you're not having explosions. That works, but, and once, well, I'm trying to think, what would the light pumping rocket hybrid be, and when would you use it? I don't know. But that's the extra credit question. The green energy, and this is, well, yeah, it's going to be more elegant, subtle, and effective, ultimately. This approach involves harnessing and using ambient energy in real time, and is not unlike solar power in that respect. In other words, that part's not a big, it's been done before. The idea of using the ambient light, that's what that is, right? You're not using all of it with solar, but you're using ambient light. That's all I'm doing here, just a different way. And I shouldn't have to explain it again and again and again. I may sound a little underwhelmed about this sometimes, but I'm fully aware of those facts, and just a little bit fatigued by them. The free energy is all around us. In every photon, it's there when you look out your window, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. In every photon, right down to the visible light and temperature in the environment, wherever you may be enjoying this presentation. This free energy includes the entire terahertz spectrum, by the way, which is another distraction I'll save for later, but all that is the temperature range found everywhere in the universe between negative 459, which is 0.1 terahertz, roughly, which is what, it just happens to be the temperature of the coldest part of space, which is most of space, the interstellar stuff. That's left over from the Big Bang. That's the cosmic background radiation. Your 2.7 K, rounded off to the 3K, they call it, if you're in the biz, And positive 334 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 10 terahertz, which is where it ends. The next thing after 10 terahertz is gigahertz or something. So there it is. There's a lot of the big chunk of temperature. So if you're finding wave guys that fell off of spaceships, they're using temperature to float, okay? And so does a balloon. Use temperature to float. And the hot air balloon, it's named after it, using temperature to float. So first realize that you are in fact sitting in it. I am here to tell you how to capture it and use it. Pardon me. To quote myself, if I may, quote, large numbers of little things doing little things quickly and repeatedly add up to very big things, unquote. That's how I had to remember it. I had to memorize that. Out in the woods, away, no pen, no paper, no recording devices, no nothing. When it really hit, supreme extreme energy density. What would that do? That was after I saw the balloon go up the shaft of light, which was the real inspiration. You couldn't make it up. Same park in Alpharetta, Georgia. I rollerbladed that place a billion times thinking about this stuff. And sometimes you see things. You see waves in creeks. You see whirlpools merge and become electrons. You see these giant billowing cumulus clouds down there that you don't get in other parts of the country, and you see that happen. The water go from the creek to the sky in one day. I had a great time down there thinking about this too. And at one point I realized it was the numbers, the little things, the little adding up. It's just energy density, but I wasn't coming at it that way. I was coming at it from the how does it work way. In this case, the underappreciated scales and numbers in nature are far more relevant to this problem than our equations. when you see that balloon go up like a it looked like the old Star Trek when they, what do they call that? Not teleport, but they beam the thing. They pull it up on the tractor beam. That's it. A balloon comes out of a lost balloon from the daycare. Look, I guess it was a birthday party. I'm resting between big long chunks of the park to skate. I'm resting. It's a cloudy day, billowy day, okay? But still sunny. It's September in Alpharetta. So it's like one of these days where when the clouds come, you're cold, but the sun comes out, you're warm again. If you're dressed like that. You know how that is on the beach, right? Everybody does. But it was like that. And I'm resting there, taking my break, and the balloon comes bobbling across there, and I'm thinking about gravity at the time, and that's another, I don't know where I was with it, but thinking about it. And then this balloon comes across the thing. I'm like, oh, that balloon's going to get pulled down by the wind from those cars. It's going to pull that balloon down. Because it was only just above the cars, 10 feet above the cars, because it's coming across the road into the park. And it bobbles across. I'm like, okay, it's going to make it. The balloon's going to survive. And then the clouds part. The sun beams down from here. Here's dark shadows. Here's a bright September sun in Alpharetta, Georgia. Still pretty warm out there when there's not big clouds, and bright. And a shaft of light came down. The balloon bobbles its way into the shaft of light and go tractor beams right up to the sun. I mean, from your eye, the way your eye would look at it, it's like, oh my. Till you look up and you see it's going right toward the sun. Pulled toward the sun. My, oh my. It was barely bobbling around. Now it's pulled toward the sun. Straight up. Not straight, but in a straight line at an angle. So that was kind of a eureka moment. And then I was off on the light matter interaction. In this case, letting things... Okay, here we go. And we will be using time as a tool here. What I saw was just a happenstance. Letting things just do what they do naturally at the very high speeds they do them at. When you set things up, that's what we're going to do, set things up to do what they would be doing anyway, like that balloon did, but so that they are doing them optimally for a purpose, like some flying saucer does when it rotates and goes into the sun. That is how words like propellantless and perpetual motion leave the fiction and fantasy realm to become real life. There are zeros upon zeros of bulletproof, idiot-proof, yocto-quadrillion, zepto-quintillions just sitting out there waiting to be used. Those tiny little things in such large numbers and in such high speeds and in such small spaces compound and add up, don't they? As anyone who has ever worked around nuclear energy or seen Oppenheimer twice in the theater, as I have, can tell you, and a lot of other people can tell you. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. There is no excuse why anti-gravity and inertial mass reduction cannot be achieved, starting now with us. If you have an excuse, put it in the comments. The technologies are already out there, but they are unguided, unpurposed, ignored, forgotten, and or underpurposed. I am here to get the ball rolling in the right direction by first focus people on intelligible and feasible and achievable concepts, and then developing them. When you are stuck with a difficult situation in life, so that you have to repeatedly reframe a problem, and it seems to be going nowhere, sometimes you will stumble upon a much easier solution than the ones you have been trying over and over and over again to no avail. Sometimes it can be shockingly simple, as anyone who has ever tried unplugging it and then plugging it back in can attest. This is one of those times. Normally, I would call myself a simpleton here and joke about how it takes a simpleton to find the simplest solution, but not this time. Instead, once again, I will assert that this light-pumping behavior is the way to go now to make the most progress in the least time with the knowledge and resources we already have. Nothing mysterious here, folks. Just got to be put together differently. People should keep working on the warp drives, gravity generation, and quantum inertia, and whatever else. I could be wrong. But again, I would assert that this almost mindless, overlooked simplicity is undoubtedly the best path to pursue vigorously, and that is just the base reality for now, to the exclusion of nothing else. And it can only succeed, period. Put it in your portfolio, folks. This outcome will happen eventually anyway, with or without us here and now. But why not us? And why not now? At the risk of sounding defensive, the logic behind this concept cannot be seriously questioned. The physics is already out there. Anyone can see it. With the energy levels and phases, it is what it is. You just have to look at it differently. So, you can either accept that it is what it is or not, and start working toward the future or not. The math is mostly there and things become pretty obvious when considering the undeniable effectiveness and possibilities of cascading scales of time and photonic momentum. This reality is almost indisputable, despite the fact that the concept is perhaps lacking its best and most concise description with mathematical symbols. I bet it is behind closed doors, though, huh? I bet it is out at Wright State. Perhaps ironically, the engineering and fabrication technologies are both further along in those aspects because there are people unknowingly doing bits and pieces of this work all around the world right now in academic laboratories and fledgling industries. I had to practice that many times before I started reading the basic materials for a lot of this are already out there. But their use has not been correctly purposed, let alone optimized, has it? It is up to us, in this tinfoil hat affinity group, to start to make that happen. In closing, I realize that I may not have explained this to everyone's liking as yet, and that is understandable. On the other hand, there is very little chance that this notion can fail. One way or another, it will happen eventually anyway. Probably did already. Probably did, didn't it? Probably. Even if it is only a step toward bigger and better things. Dark energy, folks. I want you to picture a thing that isn't there. What would you do with a thing that isn't there? It wouldn't be in your way, would it? If it wasn't there. If the man upon the stair wasn't there, then he wouldn't be in the way. Pardon me. That's what I think it is with this dark energy deal. I can speculate too. But I am not a physicist. Do not put this on your homework. In closing, I realize. Did I already realize? Yes. So now it is your turn out there. I will gladly take questions now or anytime on X, formerly known as Twitter. I will look right now. Or in my YouTube and Rumble channel comments where other people might benefit from our interaction. Additionally, I plan on doing more shows like this. I'm thinking maybe once a week on this, and then maybe once a week on current events. Tuesdays and Thursdays, about 10 in the morning. Why not? It's just a thought. Because now I know how to live stream, and I'm not shy about yelling into the void anymore. Doing a video is one thing. You have to go step by step, especially if you're a boomer. We didn't grow up with this public, worldwide exposure. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So then I'll do that. And maybe learn how to put Zoom on there and get guests and all that stuff everyone else does. But it'll be slow going. I still have some time, some stuff I have to air on here. Especially about the other thing, which I call artificial lightning, which came up this morning, so that's another story. If you heard that part, I was talking about the photons wrapping around each other. It has to do with that. How to make electrons out of water, okay? We'll get to that later. I think this will break first because of the UFOs and all that stuff, right? Yeah, a lot of people thinking about this stuff, especially you people in the future. I knew you'd be here. Maybe. Yeah, you'll be here. I consistently bore myself by thinking about this too much, as it can get repetitive and tedious, but I rarely get tired of discussing it. But I do. I'm almost done for the day. And the week. Thanks for hanging around. Go back and listen to those. Double speed. Crash course. Especially if it comes up that's, yeah, the thing, huh? A lot of people are going to want to know about that quickly. And the future is wide open. In the meantime, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. Jeremy, Tim, Bernie, your name here. I'm ready for questions, which I will check in a moment. But first, I am going to catch my breath, have a sip, change the screen. I'll change the screen first because people are sick of looking at this screen by now. So we'll go over to this screen while I get it together for a second here. All right, thanks for coming, folks. Let's check for questions and see if we don't delete ourselves or something stupid here. Because once I get carried away, I forget what window I'm on and the like. Okay, there's a screen here that tells me if anyone is commenting. But it seems to be stuck on yesterday, isn't it? I tried to clear yesterday, but it won't go away today. So let's look over here. Let's get really bold here. And just go over to our channel. I should be smoother at this. But I'm new, I'm a boomer. Excuses. See, that isn't it. We want to look at our main screen here. And it tells me one is watching. Okay, well, it's a holiday. I don't care. I'm here for the future watchers. Okay, no comments here. We don't need to listen to ourselves right now. As a matter of fact, we'll shut that off so we don't. And let's go to the music and info out. No comments over here. No questions. We'll get to those later. They're going to be there, believe me. So let's go to our music to get out. And because it's a holiday, we will hear some holiday music. Happy New Year, everyone. There's supposed to be one more.